There's been a lot of good work on that front. There's two kind of game scenes, I'd say. One that is all about that, and one that maybe isn't. I definitely think there's a big industry around people trying to find nuance in games on like video essays. So yeah, I think someone's got to put it there.
Oh, this is a great question, because I think that the ethical grayness, even kind of moral grayness, has always been a topic not only in games but even in literature. You know, some of my favorite books have characters that are deeply flawed. It's an incredible way for people to challenge their own perspectives and what, you know, if you look at a character and you initially think that maybe he's the hero, and then throughout the story maybe now this character, maybe this person's a villain, it kind of forces you to take a look at those traits and those characteristics that are affecting that opinion. And actually some of the most meaningful experiences I've had with games have played with nuance and kind of that ethical and moral gray area.
I think nuance is really key. When you live in a world that is full of noise and it's full of, you know, clickbait and people trying to capitalize on your very limited, you know, attention span and free time, therefore you're going to lose a lot of the gray areas. You know the thing that gets me about nuance and kind of grey areas is not necessarily that they are, I think, a way to try to create a common ground or try to come to, try to approach, you know, real truth or anything like that. It's more to me again, it's an affective domain consideration. It's about emotion. When you acknowledge the grey areas, you also have a much less extreme feeling towards whatever conclusion that you come to.
Māori game developers want to look into bringing in Māori stories into video gaming. We do have to be very careful about talking to, you know, where these stories come from and making sure that we're doing it in a way that's respectful. And same with tangapoto. It's very easy to just use tangapoto sounds without really understanding the story of those instruments. And yeah, so I think it's just really important to be working with, like, especially with tangapoto, coming from a music background, that's where I'm coming from. You know, it's good to be working with practitioners who have had that life experience and know those instruments very personally.
Studios have a responsibility to challenge people, to push their boundaries, you know, to stimulate people, to make people ask questions about themselves and about the world. That's fundamentally what all literature seeks to do. And I think games, just as well as any other piece of literature, have a responsibility to do that.
I had an interesting conversation yesterday at one of the social events from the NZGDC, where we were sort of looking at sort of the ethics of technology in general, because we're creating really incredible conceptualized forms of games or tech in general, but we're sort of moving away from some of the human interaction and humanness of sort of sitting down and having important conversations. We're sort of opting into having like very mechanized and virtual ways of meeting up or having that connection. So it's like, even though we're progressing, it's great, but sometimes you sort of think like, oh, am I missing out on some of the connections I could be forming in real life?
I think it's also a nuance, and grey morals are a really good tool in terms of pulling reality into games, like in terms of making people feel connected to it, because, you know, reality itself is very grey and nuanced. Yeah, so I think it's part of world building.
Again, you know, game makers always comes from that vision holder. If that's important to their vision holder and they want to make an impact with that and the choices that they make, I think it'll go into the world. It's like any other medium in entertainment. You know, there's a big difference between, you know, Steven Spielberg movies versus Jordan Peele movies. You know, from them, you know, you have a Jewish filmmaker and a black filmmaker, and you can see those two things and what they value come out. No matter how entertaining or sad, I mean, you can still see the through line. And so if you get a diverse group of game makers like they are in filmmakers, that through line will all come through, but the fact that, you know, it has to hit the market first and it has to have space in order to thrive, which is a little bit threshold. It's a little easier for film than it is for games, I feel, because games takes a lot of resources. I mean, 5 years carrying a team of 25 to 30 people That's a lot of money.